knew very little about who the premier artists were, who the projects, what they were building, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So in advance of that VR auction, of course, I had to do my homework. So I looked up, these the lizards, right? Algoanna. I looked up AlgoBots, CSA, the squirrels, and
Yeah.
everything. And boy, was I blown away, right? I was just very surprised that there was such strong communities, discords, etc. And I knew I had to get involved, right? So when that auction happened, I have to admit I didn't have a plan going in, right? I just thought, oh, this AlgoBot is pretty cool, and because Chris Swenner wants it so much, Chris Swenner at Reachlang, of course,
Yeah.
right? I was like, well, I want it more. I want it too. So like, I didn't want Chris to have his Reach AlgoBot. And then when the lizard came around, when the Joker lizard came around, I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I just had to make a play for it, right? It was just so fun not to. I just had to.
Sometimes outtakes really work though, so they're just like snappy, get people's attention.
Exactly.
You get the blooper reel.
I love it. I love it.
All right, well, welcome to AlgoHQ. I'm here with Kyle Wang from Valhalla Capital. Thanks for coming on, Kyle.
Yeah, of course. A huge pleasure to be here. Love, just supporting the Algorand ecosystem, and really happy to share more about my story here and why I'm so bullish on Algorand NFTs.
Yes, so that's what we need to hear about NFTs. You're very big into the NFT scene right now. I guess we can start there. What brought you originally to the Algorand NFT scene, and why do you think it's starting to really blow up?
Yeah, absolutely. So for myself, just a little bit of backstory, right? I run this accelerator called Valhalla Capital, and our whole thesis is to focus on emerging chains and emerging ecosystems, right? So that could be a geographic, right, like India, Latin America, or blockchain specific, right, such as like Solana, Algorand, some of these other emerging blockchains as well. And I was very fortunate about 6 to 8 months ago. A very good friend of mine, who's one of the co-founders of Opulus, right, the a project being built on Algorand, focusing on music royalty NFT backed lending,
Yep.
and he really brought me in and just into awareness of the Algorand ecosystem. Because prior to that, I'd owned a good amount of Algorand really just for fun, right? Just as just to have that exposure to another
Speculators. Yeah.
Correct. Well, longer term speculator, but speculation nonetheless. Guilty as charged. And just talking to the founder there, Miles, right, and just meeting a lot of people in the Algorand ecosystem through him, I realized it was just something really special, right? And from the venture capital perspective, you look at an ecosystem and you ask yourself, well, why is this one so much more successful than another, right? And at the time, I felt that Algorand was incredibly undervalued because I'd meet these incredible founders, right? The founders of like Algo Mint, Algo Pulse, like a lot of these early days, right? And they were all raising, right, the very first round then. And I won't belabor the point, but what I found was just so incredible to me is that these founders would coordinate so well. Like they would talk to each other, they would figure out who's building what, and they would kind of resist the urge to have like 4 to 5 different teams build the same product, right? They would all coordinate. And another just fascinating aspect is that, and I just mentioned really quickly, is that there's so many of them are out of Australia, right? There's a lot of just DeFi, genius and talent coming out of Australia, out of these Aussies, and it's got to be something in the water or something. But you see this big trend. It's like the DeFi capital of the world. But to go back to this point, then, so I got very involved in the Algorand kind of venture ecosystem, right? Just helping a lot of these DeFi startups, with their go-to-market, with their, just bootstrapping them, right, from 0 to 100. And over the course of all of that, I grew very close to Michael and AJ, right, at Algo Mint and Melt, and they're huge ecosystem boosters in their own right. Right, I can't say enough good things about them.
Yeah.
And Michael, when he told me about this NFT auction, this VR NFT auction, that was when I got very excited about it, right? Because at the time, I'm very sad to say, I didn't really know very much about the Algo NFT scene, right? I had spoken a lot to Zest Bloom, I'd spoken a lot to a couple of other founders who were looking to build in that space, but I knew very little about who the premier artists were, who the projects, what they were building, right?
Yeah.
So in advance of that VR auction, of course, I had to do my homework. So I looked up, these the lizards, right? Algoanna. I looked up AlgoBots, CSA, the squirrels, and everything. And boy, was I blown away, right? I was just very surprised that there was such strong communities, discords, etc. And I knew I had to get involved, right? So when
Right.
that auction happened, I have to admit I didn't have a plan going in, right? I just thought, oh, this AlgoBot is pretty cool, and because Chris Swenner wants it so much, Chris Swenner at Reachlang, of course,
Yeah.
right? I was
Yeah.
like, well, I want it more. I want it too. So it's like I didn't want Chris to have his Reach AlgoBot. And then when the lizard came around, when the Joker lizard came around, I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I just had to make a play for it, right? It was
You
just
had
so
to.
fun not to. I just had to. So hopefully that kind of gives you a good background. I mean, the rest is kind of history, right? I jumped into these communities. It's so easy to get addicted to just buy one NFT after the other, right? And
Yeah, I
you
know.
know, here we are today.
I know it's like, oh, I can throw another 20 algo at this, 40
Well,
here, maybe, a few thousand here for some of us, So you actually, that Joker Algoana purchase is the highest Algoana purchase still, right?
yes, but at the
Okay.
way things are going, not for long.
Yeah,
Not
I
for
don't
long.
think for long. And I think you probably made a good choice there because the Joker just seems to be such a popular, like, iconic type of thing.
Just a testament to what this incredible community is capable of, right? You have so many
Hmm.
different skill sets, so many bright ideas. I'm so excited, right, every day to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, even the guy who runs Algoannas, he sent me a hat and a shirt, and like I just think that stuff like that, where, like you said, I've never been able to like, I've chatted with him like through Twitter DMs, but never like spoken to him directly. But I can just tell like his project is taking the whole concept of like a series of NFTs and really like
Mhm.
extending it the farthest that anyone has on the Algorand ecosystem right now. Like he
Right.
has, not only does he have high quality art that blows a lot of other projects out of the water. I mean, art's subjective, but like you could tell that he puts a lot of detail into his, and like that usually ends up well, but not every time. You could say some series are like they thrive off their like purity and simplicity. But for Algoanas, I think it's like just the depth of expression that all the different versions have. So everyone kind of, you get that same feeling like with Bored Apes, where you can really find one that you'll like and like that will express you well.
I was
And
just
then
going to say that really quick. I don't
sure.
know if he studied Bored Ape Yacht Club or this just came intuitively to him, but the merch component is so strong, right? Like in BAYC, everybody loves the merch, and Albie also, he's been kind enough to ship me some merch right in advance, right, to this hotel I'm staying at now. So I'm looking forward
Ooh,
to
wow.
representing Goannas when I'm in New York, right? So I'm very
Yes.
very.
Okay, I'll be sure to wear my hat when we go to NYC
Please
or
do, please
NFT
do.
NYC. Yeah, so and it's also the fact that he integrated a staking type of deal. And do you know details about how that works?
Yeah,
So like how is that work with staking NFTs? Do you have to
happy to
lock in the
share.
value or something like that?
Yeah, no, no. The way he did it was actually very elegant and very simple, and I think really quite ingenious. For it could just be my own ignorance, but I really haven't seen another NFT project do something like that, just to kind of promote longer term holding, take supply off the market, and
Hmm.
at the same time build FOMO and excitement about what these eggs are. What's coming up,
Yeah.
what's Goanna 2.0. But the process is really quite simple, right? When you purchase a Goanna or any Algorand NFT, right? You have an asset ID and you have, a marker or a name of the NFT, right? So on the members only section of his website, right? I believe it's something called like Lizard Lounge or something of that nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
You simply just fill in these very basic details: your wallet address, the asset ID, right, of the Goanna and which number Goanna it is, right? And somehow he's created a very elegant implementation where you submit this form on the website, it syncs with the Algoana Discord, right? And it pops up
Mm.
a message to say it's been successfully staked. And then it's just simply pretty much just all the on-chain system, right? Where you're obligated to keep that Goanna staked for 8 weeks, right? And if you keep it staked and you don't move it or sell it or list it, etc., for that 8 weeks, you'll get a special egg at the end of that term, right? And then afterward, you can do whatever you want with it. But the way he did it was just so simple, right? I don't see anyone having technical problems. I don't see anyone really questioning the process, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's pretty much the gist of it, and it's very very simple. I think a great model for some other NFT projects to adopt and follow.
I definitely agree. I think that rewarding the community for increasing scarcity is definitely a good idea when you're like trying to get the NFT project off the ground, trying to establish it as a blue chip, which definitely Algoannas has a high potential of being right now. what other projects, NFT projects on Algorand? I know you just came into the NFT space 3 4
Right.
weeks ago or so, but what others have you seen that you think could have that blue chip potential?
Yeah, of course. And, so I look at a lot of NFT projects and, of course, everything is completely subjective. But for myself, just kind of what's come across my desk, what I've kind of seen on Twitter, I've been the top two, I think, to really just pop into my mind space, right? And part of that might be influence in the VR auction is Bank on Algorand or AlgoBots. And MNNGO, right? Mostly not going out, right? That whole series.
Yeah.
And, I think the two of those with AlgoBot specifically, I think what they've done is they've just been around for quite some time, and they've had done such a great job collaborating with a number of Algorand projects, right? Such
Mm-hmm.
as Yieldly, Tiny Man, just releasing these kind of great art collaborations with logos, etc. And I've been trying to help the creator out by just making some more introductions to some other Algorand projects to just keep it rolling, right?
Right.
But that's just great. I love it when I see projects where founders or people in the Algorand ecosystem actually end up adopting one of their NFTs as their avatar, right? Like Algo House as well, right? With
Yeah.
all of these great takes on existing superheroes, I guess, in the
Yeah.
Algorand ecosystem, and of course MNGO, right? Those Mingos, I suppose you call them. Um, is just so successful because of this wide variety of traits and different birds that appeal to different people, and just
Mm-hmm.
such a strong community component when you have so many different options, right, in NFTs. So
Yeah.
those are the ones I think that right now are really are really accelerating. But I definitely don't want to do a disservice to so many others, such as like Dope Cats or Algo Bones, or all of these other ones, Little Free Club, and all these kind of things where every day I look at the follower account and it's up another 50 or 100 or whatnot, and they're selling and they're doing all these great drops. Hexalites, for instance, right? Another fascinating project. So I'm remiss in not being able to list all of them on this call, but I'm just very, very bullish, right, on artists across this ecosystem.
Right, right. And you never know at this early stage what really could, have a pop off moment where some external catalyst takes something like Little Freak Club or
Mhm.
any of the other series that you mentioned that are still building up. Algo Bones is another one. And maybe someone catches on and it just blows up, kind of like the Algo Saiyans that Silvio McCauley and Kelly Callahan made their profile pictures. Now
Right.
Sean Ford, and now they've had a big explosion because of that. And AlgoBots too. It was also pretty sure Kelly Callahan was again the first person from Algorand to make her profile picture an AlgoBot, and then everyone else followed her.
I think maybe this goes a bit deeper into Algorand and everything, but for myself, I look at the entire Algorand ecosystem as incredibly undervalued, right? And from a venture perspective, investing in NFTs or buying NFTs is probably one of the stronger leveraged bets you can take, right? And what do I mean by that is that if if Algorand, the token of the ecosystem, were to go up, let's say by like 5 times, 5x or something, right? In my view, I think the NFTs would appreciate a lot more, right? Just because the
Mm,
community potential, right? The
mm,
stickiness of the communities and all of the network effects is even more incredible. And we see this with CryptoPunks, with Bored Ape Yacht Club, where if you had purchased one of those on the ground floor, you outperformed Ethereum by a lot, right? And I don't see why in Algorand, right? Same creativity, same incredible creators, right? Incredible community members. Why that would be any different? So I hope that gives you a good understanding. For myself right now, I'm just interested in collecting, accumulating all various types of animal and monster and everything in between JPEGs, right?
yeah.
And just bringing and spotlighting a lot of artists and trying to surface them to the top.
Wouldn't it be the most economically savvy to sell NFTs when the price of algo is low and buy when the price is high, so you can sell for a higher algo amount and buy for a lower algo amount? And of course, if you were to buy a Bored Ape at the beginning, of course, it's worth way more in dollars. But
Right.
is it worth more in the ETH? So what
Right.
do you think of this?
Yeah, certainly. So what we've seen is quite an interesting trend in Bored Ape Yacht Club and some of these other NFT projects, where lately, as the price of ETH has been rising, right? Interestingly, the price, I think the floor for a lot of these apes stays constant in dollar terms, right?
Mm,
Where I think the base value of a Bored Ape at the time like has dropped as low as like 20 to 25 ETH, because everyone tried to sell out and essentially move that capital into what they saw as greater growth sectors, right? Maybe those are layer ones, other DeFi projects, whatever, wherever the explosion is coming from. But recently, even as I say that, right, the prices have now crept back up to 30 to 35 ETH, leading many, so-called NFT influencers or tastemakers or whatever to say that the dip is over its bottom, right? So it's hard to say, but I would say like from my earlier comment, from a just pure like even ETH standpoint, right? If you had bought, Bored Apes at like, back when it was like, 5 ETH or even less or whatever, right? Compared to what it's worth now, right? There's no comparison. Like pick your poison, dollar terms, pesos, ETH, right? It's just appreciated so much. So while you're right, like, and I think I commented on this, when someone was asking about this on Twitter, but overall, like, I think there's nothing wrong with either strategy, right? It's really relates to just traditional investments too. If you believe that you can really time the market and you can turn 100 algo into like 10,000 algos, right, over the course of a couple, 6 months to a year by flipping, right? And indeed, many people are doing this, maybe not even just primarily for profit, but because they want an Goanna, right? And there's really no other way to get there unless you flip and do these short-term kind of speculations, right? It's more power to you, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
your strategy, right? And you should roll with it and rock with it. And a market needs, all types of participants. But for myself personally, like my time, I just mean this in a very like factual way, is really much better spent, I think, just spending time in the market, right? Just building positions in what I believe are, really, really enterprising artists, right? Who are very genuine, are the real deal, right?
Yeah.
Are doing their best to build a community. Because like I could go in, just in the scheme of things, right? NFTs, unfortunately, even though I'd love it to be, are not the only thing I do, right? So I'm working
Yes.
on, with portfolio companies, projects. So for myself to be sitting and I'm already in front of the screen a lot, right? But sitting on Twitter and the screen, always obsessing over, all right, I can flip, this MNGO and make like $40 to $50 on it or something, right? And I think in the greater scheme of things, that's just really, as they say, pennies on the train track, right? Really, if my thesis plays out, right? If our thesis plays out, and the Algorand community really is, it's a tired phrase now, the future of finance, right? Everything that's going on now, we'll just look back and kind of laugh. Like I should have bought like a lot yesterday. I should have bought a lot in 10 days or 20 days or 3 months, So
Yeah. I mean,
that's the way I look.
to answer based off what you said, to answer the question I was asking you, it's not so binary as to like sell NFTs here when the price of algo is lower and try to buy when like it's not binary, because there are many external factors that could come in and out, just mainly being the community may just grow massively and not like the community just grows and doesn't shrink. So then
Right.
like that's a whole market that you never know what can happen.
For myself, one of the key realizations for NFTs that I've developed just over the past year or so is that like it's just so sticky in a different way, right? Because when I hold an asset, maybe it's like a DeFi yield protocol or something of that nature, and maybe I just want to speculate, which is completely fine, right? Like maybe for me, I've it would be irresponsible for me as a investor or trader if I put money to something and it's like 20x or 30x or whatever it is, and I don't take some profit, right? At some point, I see it's just like, let's follow some principles and get some profit back out so that you can continue investing and continue to work within the
Yeah.
ecosystem, right? So for a lot of these like coins, right, it's very easy to do that. You just sell part of your position, or maybe even sell all your position, and you can accumulate more later. But then the really neat thing with NFTs is that you're really loath to sell your last NFT, because not only are you know so while you may be making a profit and realizing some incredible gains, you're selling yourself out of the community, right? You're selling a membership card, and you're selling the access to whatever future drops, benefits, these doors that are very mysterious and have, it's impossible to know what's behind them. You're selling all of that, right? And that's something that really like tore even at my own heartstrings, right? With Bored Ape Yakub, can I sell my only like Bored Ape, right? Can I don't even know at what price. What's the price of community? And it's such an interesting question, such an interesting question.
Because it is that key card that lets you into the whole world of I'm part of this, I can relate, and I can like prove that I have the skin in the game.
Right.
So it's really important. So with Valhalla, what are you guys focusing on in the Algorand ecosystem? What's your main, not the main, but what are a few of the biggest things that you think need to take a big step forward for
Mhm.
Algorand to really get the value that we all think it is valued at?
Yeah, of course. So obviously heavily biased because, everything I've said before. But for myself, like I'm very excited for the next 2 quarters, right? A lot of and I probably won't be telling anything particularly new to everyone who closely follows the DeFi ecosystem in on Algorand already. But so many of these founders, right, just the way the projects kind of lined up, are gearing up to roll out their main nets, right? Many are already on testnet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Algorand being like a great example. FXDX, right? Another derivatives platform on Algorand will enter
Very
test.
excited for that one.
So when I was talking about the DeFi primitives, what I mean is another term for it is just money Legos, right? All these individual parts that build up the whole ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So these are lending protocols, DEXs, synthetics, NFT marketplaces, what have you. And I just wanted to comment that the really neat thing about Algorand, and it's not to throw shade at many other blockchain projects that are earlier on, but it works, right? We use ASA almost every day in the Algorand ecosystem, right? I can purchase NFTs, I can use Tinyman, right? I can swap on Tinyman, I can collect, yield on Yieldly and enter these no loss lotteries, right? So we know it works today. This ecosystem already is well designed, right? The technology is sound, and we see that. I would say the only element that is preventing, I would say, rocket ship growth at this point in its own time is very robust bridge, just to bridge assets from Algorand, from Ethereum, from Bitcoin, even from all these other different
Mm-hmm.
ecosystems where DeFi is more mature.
Mm-hmm.
Because we see that total value locked, or TVL, which is what we say in this space, when it's just all these different, like hundreds of millions of dollars that flow into different protocols to
Yeah.
yield farm, right? None of that is very loyal, right? I mean, like the fund managers, or the yield farmers, the people in charge of that money, like what they're concerned about is yield, right? Where can I put a lot of yield? Where can I get a lot of yield on my money? And I think when Algorand launches a very robust bridge, all of these DeFi primitives or initial projects launch, right? If we can make it easy for a lot of these whales, funds, right, trading desks to move a lot of capital over here, it's as good as done. In my view, I think really any system is only as good as the incentives you design into it, right? So if you're a trader, or you're a yield farmer, or probably 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, right? Most of the time you're going to do what's best for your book, right? Or for whatever your strategy is, right? So like, I would consider, while it would be might be admirable and noble for someone to stay on a specific chain, if that chain doesn't give them very good yield, right? Instead of
Mm-hmm.
moving it to another one, economically, it just doesn't make sense, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's why, for that reason, you see this capital moving so freely. So I think in response to that, all I would say is that it's really incumbent upon the founders and the VCs, right? The community members, to come up and think of better incentive structures, right? Because what we've seen, and it's kind of a buzzword now with DeFi 1.0, DeFi 2.0, but this is kind of the general discussion where, the technologies are evolving, right? DeFi 1.0, we know in many ways worked, right? It brought a lot of liquidity into the ecosystem that made a lot of these other money Legos, right, possible. But then there's huge drawbacks, which is exactly as you said, this kind of mercenary, right, capital, which is just it'll stay there as long as you give them a reason to stay there, and as soon as you turn off that spigot, right, as soon as you reduce incentives, right, they're gone, because there's so many other projects that raise, and they have their waxing period and waning period, right, in terms of
Right.
incentives. You could also ask yourself, right, is it really important to keep like the whales around, or is it more important just to get more and more retail users, the next 100 million, the next 500 million people in? And will that in and of itself create a large enough and sustainable market, right, where you don't always have to cater to the top, like 1 to 5% who are moving around like tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's kind of interesting, and I wonder if as the network effect kind of grows, maybe one day DeFi itself will just be very stable in terms of the retail community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of leads into my second point, which I think the two classes of things you could do is, one, like create like really interesting kind of incentive structures, and I think there's some things that are being tried already on the Algorand ecosystem, where investors have to have a liquidity commitment with their investment, just to show that they're actually in it for the long term. You
Right.
weed out a lot of like more you could say mercenary or more vulturistic kind of like capital, right, that's kind of looking to make a quick flip.
Sure.
And the second, so that's on the incentive end, and that could be in the sense of vesting rewards, where your yield comes to you after 3 to 6 months and is vested slowly, right, or over a year. Or that could come in just raw community building, right, where you build such a heavy allegiance or loyalty to the project where you're not going to move it to Solana, or you're not going to move it to Cosmos or whatever, for an incremental increase in yield of 5% or 8%, which is quite a lot, but nonetheless, right, just because you're so tied down in the community. So I could see that happening. And I'll be honest with you, I really think NFTs plays a huge role, right, in that kind of strategy.
So when it comes to governance, what do you think of option A and B, and what are you leaning more toward?
Yeah, I will say I do see both sides of the argument, right? Like obviously for myself, option A seems a lot less punishing, right, for someone who wants to deploy, who wants to yield farm, who wants to move things around. But it is not insurmountable, right? For myself, I'm actually leaning a lot more toward option B, just because I think that's because option A is something that's like well known, right? Like that's something that's like the status quo, right? It's like, all right, like you just literally you hold this in your wallet. If you mess up, it's what it is. But I think like when it comes to proof of stake, right? Because there's all of this like nothing at stake problems and everything, right? It's and just for the audience, right? Unlike proof of work, right, where you have to commit the computing power, like there's no getting around it, right? Your electricity bill is going to be the proof of work that you put into it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas proof of stake, the whole difficulty could be that okay, you have nothing really at stake because you can pull it at any time, right? Which is why in Ethereum they have this slashing kind of function, right? Which is if you're validated, if you don't have that uptime, right, they actually take ETH away from you. So like when it comes to Algorand, I still believe like for proof of stake, what you need is like you need some sort of like punishment or you need some sort of weight behind your commitments, right? Like that to me, I think is just conducive and it's just better for the ecosystem as a whole, right? Like if you have all these like huge validators or whatever, and they've given you their word essentially, they've clicked that button and they want to like commit all of these things, but they're not committing to their job, right? Which is to vote, which is to actually like create governance, right? Not just be there and be a leech and just try to suck up the yield, whatever it is,
Yeah.
20%, right?
Yeah.
That to me, I think can only be a net positive, right? And I'm speaking as someone who already, I don't have all the time in the world, right? I already have a very cramped schedule as it is, but I do believe like when I make that commitment, right, I need to show up for it. So that for me, like I think makes option B a lot more attractive.
Right. Do you think that all that algo in option B, if it gets locked up, will be stagnant and not being utilized to the maximum it could be in the DeFi?
Yeah, and that's a really really great question. I mean, again, I can offer two perspectives there, right? So for myself on the first hand, like I would say coming from a very like pure degen like DeFi background, right? Like the idea of me just like leaving these coins sitting in your wallet kind of locked up, right? It really gives me a lot of pause, right? I think something that a lot of other ecosystems have done well, like Ethereum with Lido.finance and Solana with Marinade and many of these others, where you can create this synthetic, right, of that locked up token and trade it, right? So what I mean is like if you stake ETH, and I've done this personally, right, where if you stake your ETH into ETH 2.0, through like Stakewise or Lido or whatever, Lido will give you something called STETH or staked ETH, right, which is a derivative which you can then take to other like DeFi, yield farms and then use it again, right? So you can continue
Right.
to unlock your capital. Whereas for Algorand, right, to my knowledge, that's not currently possible, right? You just kind of need to keep them sitting in your wallet. So
Mm.
to me, like I do think that's an imperfection. I hope it's something that can be corrected in some way or something that can be, in some form, right? Linked one to one to some kind of synthetic, so you can unlock that value. So it's almost exactly what Staker DAO is doing, but at the same time, giving you that option to continue participating in governance, right? I think that would definitely be ideal. But the second thing I would say is that at least for a burgeoning ecosystem, I mean, it's still early in Algorand. I think that's why we're all so excited about it. You could also just make the case, and I do believe it's still a strong one, that you locking up those tokens, right? We don't always need to min max for the 100%, even though we're most of us are definitely that type of people in this space. But you could really make the firm argument that that Algorand is not being wasted, right? That Algorand is being like locked up for a very specific purpose, which is to vote, right?
Yes.
Contribute to the ecosystem, validate. And I would also add that this is the same argument that a lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts or maximalists, whichever, will make for a proof of work, right? That electricity is actually not being wasted, that it's being used to essentially secure one of the most valuable networks in the world, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like how you look at it, and to me, I think with Algorand you can make an argument in parallel.
I definitely agree. I think whichever company, or whether it be Algorand themselves, but I think it'll be a DeFi company that comes up with the capability to have your algo in their protocol, but also have a contract which allows you to vote while it's in their protocol, will make a big splash, because I think it's possible to have the best of both worlds. And I definitely agree that having the algo locked in governance is probably one of the most important uses of it, if we take a long-term view, because we want this chain to be developed by the people voting on it, And the more that are staked, one, it'll increase, you know, price action. It'll improve price action, which therefore will naturally drive people to the chain because attention. It'll bring attention to the chain. And secondly, yeah, it'll just encourage more people to just vote and, you know, have their say. And I think that's really important. So
And let
I
me add
go
one
ahead.
other quick thing, right? I think another neat, and this is just part of my thesis, and I would say also both of our thesis at Valhalla Capital as well. I think that in the future, right, you'll have a lot of mercenary capital always, right, moving around. You know, the Alamedas of the world, the jump capitals of the world, right, where their
Yeah.
mandate is to maximize, right, their you know, the value on their capital. Um, but I think at the core of a lot of these communities, which is why I firmly believe that we're headed toward a multi-chain world, right? It's not winner take all. It's just because, you know, when you have ecosystems that grow the way they do, right? It's all again about the power of community. So when you have these big backers like Alameda FTX or the Algorand Foundation, right? Or, you know, the Avalanche Foundation, et cetera, backing these huge, you know, multi-billion-dollar ecosystems with really strong believers, I think the future, what it'll look like is you always have a core like contingent, right? That's always supporting that particular protocol, no matter what, right? No matter the incremental
Right.
difference in yield, opportunities, technology, it just falls to the wayside because nothing compares to the strength of human emotion, right? And
Hmm.
connection and
Yeah.
tribalism. So in Algorand, I just want to bring this up because like what I see on the NFT space is that to my surprise, you know, it's quite an interesting crowd, right? Because a lot of the people here are in their like late 30s, 40s, right? Older people with established income, right? With a, you know, regular income that they put into NFTs. But more than that, I meet so many people where, you know, their path into into NFTs or DeFi, right, is pretty much the opposite of mine, right? So they came directly into NFTs, right? That's their first exposure with DeFi, with
Yeah.
even perhaps even crypto. A lot of these artists, right? They've not known anything but, you know, Algorand, right? And then, you
Yeah.
know, not OpenSea, but AB2 Gallery or Rand Gallery, they come
Yeah.
right in. And then afterward, they learn about, oh, Tiny Man, Yieldly, what is this? What is that? Whereas for, I'm not sure about you, but at least for myself and a lot of my friends in the world I come from, it was cryptocurrency. Then you go deeper down the rabbit hole, DeFi, and then even deeper into the rabbit hole, NFTs. And it's really interesting to see that invert, right? And I think
Yeah.
Algorand, right, starting community first like that, I think is very powerful.
It's a creator economy right now. You know, there's so many people in my generation, especially, that are, you know, just, you know, they're making videos, they are making art, they are designing something, trying to start a brand. Some of my friends, they found out that, you know, I'm deep in the crypto world, especially Algo, and I think the fact that chains like Algo or Solana or Avalanche, which can offer, you know, comparable ETH functionality, maybe not the same huge network, but cheaper and faster functionality, really opened those doors to people thinking, you know, I've heard so many people living in New York say, I hate NFTs. Like, that's terrible for that's terrible. Like, artists, they say it's terrible for the environment. You know, it's a fake market, you know, it's too expensive, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, listen, stop fighting the trend and start just riding it, because like this is not going to go, like, it's not going to go away. So you might just stop trying to fight the tide. And so, but you know, something like AB2 can just let an artist list it with the snap of a finger, and that really opens up
Right, right. It
the
really opens up a lot of things because you don't have so much of the fee or the price of the artwork extracted by gas, right? I
yeah.
mean, in Ethereum, you have all these free mints that are $80 to $120, right? I was joking with a friend that for the price of a free mint on Ethereum, right, I can buy like, you know, a straight up like couple like Algorand NFTs, and, you know, almost all pretty much like 99.9% of the profits go back to the creator or to whatever
Yeah.
charity they
Yeah.
decide, right?
Yeah.
So it's so powerful. I want to also just bring up that it's so interesting that, you know, within the DeFi space, it's so easy to live in our bubble because, you know, we're talking now, and I know, you know, my perspective, which is NFTs are the best thing ever. But it's so interesting because another area that I'm quite interested in is the intersection of gaming, right, and blockchain. And, you know, I
Yeah.
have a younger brother who is quite involved in the esports world, right? So he's very involved with his college esports team, and so he knows a lot about what goes on, right? And in the, I guess, the perspectives of that particular crowd of hardcore gamers, right? And it was so interesting just to kind of hear him and his perspective on NFTs, because it was exactly as you described. It was very different, right? To me, like I didn't even really consider the the environmental impact of NFTs as being as being a very large factor here, right? But then you go on like these Reddits and these forums, and you see people are just like, they view NFTs as two things. Like one is a scam, a money grab, right? And the second is that you're destroying your environment. So not
Yeah.
only are you destroying the environment, you're also rewarding all these scammers. So like stepping outside of my bubble, I can see like NFTs and the branding and the image around them
Yeah.
have a far way to go. But I think Algorand, at least, the nice thing is that you can really dispense with the environmental impact because it's really
Mhm.
very, very minimal, if anything at all, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's very powerful.
So, I guess one more question. Do you think ETH2 is actually going to happen? Do you think they can
Yeah,
actually do it?
I'm not really a maximalist in any like particular, I think, ecosystem. I mean, when I see it, as you can kind of tell, like just from my investments, right? When I have conviction in something, I want to go heavy into it, right? And so a wise person
Right.
once told me, uh, ape heavy or don't ape at all, right? It's like, that's the only way I think to live your life, right? No half measures, just like, Mike Ehrmantraut, Better Call Saul, or Breaking Bad, right? No
Yeah.
half measures.
Yeah.
I fully believe that. When it comes to Ethereum, like, the thing is, it's very easy, I think, between different L1s, and oftentimes I do it too, tongue in cheek, right, to kind of just rib each other, etc. But for myself, I think like one thing that's really indisputable is that you have a lot of just incredibly smart people working on all of these different blockchains, and for whatever reason, they've decided that's how they want to spend their time, right? This is the ecosystem for me. So like, I think like just in general, right, is a betting against really smart people, right, is generally a very bad like EV strategy, right? So I would not be one to make like very incendiary statements like, oh, ETH 2.0 is going to fail, like it's not going to come, right? For me, like, I understand, working with a lot of developers and startups and such, like roadmaps are the hardest things to give, right? Because there's always things that come up, there's always bugs. So I'm not without sympathy, right?
Right.
I have the same sympathy for Algorand developers who are trying to push out product, and maybe they end up missing the deadline for whatever, as I have for the ETH Foundation and all of these decentralized kind of community that's working on ETH 2.0, right? What they're
Right.
trying to do is not easy, right? They're trying to essentially give a facelift um, to the largest smart contract platform in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, right? With the bulk of developer mind share and users, right? So it's not any small feat, and I certainly don't think that ETH 2.0 success anywhere diminishes from Algorand success or Solana success or whatnot. As I said, like this world is really, really big, right? And DeFi,
Right.
I think penetration, like I saw this statistic, right? And it was shocking to me. Like what they told me was that, or what I read was that the amount of people who actually are deep into DeFi, like DeFi nerds, and maybe I'd count myself among them, is probably less than like 100,000, like
Yeah.
probably even like less than 80,000. The number I read at the time was like 50,000, like worldwide, right?
Yeah.
It's just like such a small community, and it's the same people you see at
Sorry.
conferences, at events, etc. So like to me, like to develop this kind of like really angry tribalism and kind of what do they say, like spoiled milk, right, in
Yeah.
Spanish, whatever, mala
Yeah.
leche, right, with
Right.
all these other kind of chains at this stage when everything is just getting off the ground, I think it's just the height of wasted time, right? There's no
Yeah.
sense. Like to
Totally.
me, like I love Algorand. I think it makes a lot of sense, right? I think Solana made some other compromises, right, which also makes sense in the context of what they're trying to do. And I think Ethereum 2.0, right, I wish them well. And I personally, I still have a lot of Ethereum, right? It's one of the things that contributed a lot to my portfolio and my career, and I'll always be thankful for it, right? So like I guess that's a very long-winded answer, but overall I'd say yes. I think in any field where you have a lot of smart people day in day out thinking of complex problems, you just got to bet on the human spirit, right? I think
Right.
they'll pull it off, and I think
Yeah.
Algorand will also pull it off. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've started to think of it kind of comparing it to two different things.
Yeah.
The blockchain, like development, multiple layer ones. My first idea was like from when we went from telegram or
Mhm.
telegraph to telephones. And so
Uh-huh.
you had phone companies instead of like, and then those had to split up into various sub companies like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, etc. And the other idea I had was layer one blockchains are like browsers. You have Internet Explorer, you have Safari, you have Firefox, you have Chrome, you have Opera, you have a bunch of different things. That kind of reminds me of right now where they're all very formative and maybe one is better than the other, but then you had something like Google Chrome come out, which ended up taking a huge market share like later down the line. And so you never really know, and none is really better than the other. They each have their own different trade-offs, and Yeah, that's kind of what it reminds me of right now.
And I would say the only slight difference from your analogy that makes blockchain and everything so much more powerful is that when you have something like as a something like a token, right, where it rolls the user, marketer, investor all into one, that's something that's never before been seen in human
Right.
history, right? Like
Right.
Google Chrome and even between Apple and like PC fanboys, right? I tell you, like those guys, like they have a price, like things get really bad or whatever, right? I still think like a good percentage of those people will switch over, right? Like when Mac released that copy, and I have one of them, right? This MacBook Pro, I can't remember, or Air with the butterfly keys, and they would stick. Right? So many of my friends switched over to PC just like that. But the thing is, like with blockchain, I think it's just so much stickier, right? Like people, Solana went down, and I'm certainly not throwing shade. It's just illustrating the point. Solana went down like 2 times now, right? Like one time for like almost the entire day. Like that's insane, right? It's just like this multi-billion-dollar like blockchain goes down for almost like an entire day. A friend of mine who has most of his funds on Solana just said, "Yep, all my money is frozen." Like that's just terrifying. But after that happened, nobody cared. Like they're just so sticky in that ecosystem, right? These kind
Yeah.
of tech hiccups, it doesn't scare them away, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's something that's so powerful. And it's like this whole Web 3.0 that'll be so different from the .com boom, right? In many ways.
Right. Right. Do you have anything you want to leave us with? Where are you going now? What are you working on?
Yeah,
Any
yeah.
last tidbits of info you want to drop?
Sure, I appreciate it. And hopefully it won't take too long. But right now I'm just traveling, right? So if any of you guys have said this on Twitter already, but as of October 23rd, right? Here I am in Las Vegas for Money 2020. I'm really looking forward to NFT NYC next week too. I'm already angry that there's no Algorand NFT meetup, but next time there will definitely be one, whether I create it or hopefully some other enterprising person in the community does. So I'll be in NFT NYC, so reach out, say hi if you're in town. And other than that, after that, I'll be headed to Lisbon, right, just to see a number of blockchain people there. So if there's any Europeans in our community, right, definitely reach out as well. In terms of like a parting thought, I'll just say, this may not be Algorand entirely specific, but just something I just want, I deeply believe, and I just like to, use this time to just kind of say it to all of my friends, right, in the Algorand community, starting artists, everyone involved in it. I just think that, we're living in a very unfair world right now, right? And what I love about the Algorand ecosystem is that so much of it is about the people, right? You can really see it. It's very genuine, right? In the founders, what they're building, they really believe in, banking the unbanked, financial, opportunity for all, these kind of like core elements. And I only bring this up because we're living in a world where people are graduating with crippling student debt, right? You have this whole COVID lockdown, right? People can't find jobs. People are just struggling to stay afloat, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this kind of environment, it kind of really it peeves me to see that some of the older generations and people who grew up in a very different climate, they come onto the news and everything, and they bash a lot of what's being built here, right? It's for a lot of the same reasons you said, like they bash cryptocurrency, they bash NFTs, they laugh at people going on Robinhood and investing in GameStop on all these kind of things. But it's just that I just think it's so short-sighted because my friends and myself in crypto, right? And I was talking to a good friend who moved from Wall Street into crypto quite recently, right? It's that no matter what walk of life you are, if you're one of these essential workers, or if you're like even on Wall Street with all these golden handcuffs, when you look down at the future of your career path, right, on a very traditional like career, 9 to 5 or whatever your schedule demands of you, it's incredibly depressing because you know where that road ends, right? For a lot of people, it's just you're a slave to your debt, right? You work through all these motions, right? You get your nice picket fence house, right? And then ultimately, like you feel
Yeah.
this sense of alienation, this fear of dying alone, right? Not to get too
Yeah.
deep and dark, right? And it's just that you're just stuck on this path, and you feel like this is what school and everything has prepared you for.
Yeah.
So is it any wonder that all of these people are speculating? They're buying GameStop, they're buying AMC, right? They're aping into NFTs, they're buying crypto, right? I think like it's very admirable because these people are making a choice, and some of them are less informed than others, right? And that's something that we as a community can endeavor to push forward. But I think like when people they go on a limb, they take these risks, they bet big in something they see early and they believe in, right? I
Right.
think that's something that's incredibly commendable, incredibly admirable, and it's the essentials of the human spirit, right? And I just want to leave that, and I think that's why I love the Algorand community so well, right? With these people, these artists, creators, VCs, founders, builders, who are all willing to take a risk, right, on something that isn't fully formed yet, right? But we're very, very close, and I think the light at the end of the tunnel is tremendous, right? It's growing brighter and brighter
Yes.
every day.
Yeah, I definitely great point. Great point. People just graduating from college now, and I know a whole bunch of them. We're tired of the beaten path. We want to make our own new path. Like we see the beaten path, especially post COVID, especially, you know, seeing the wild activities of the stock market and crypto over the past year and a half. Everyone's kind of, you know, looking at their 9 to 5 or their restaurant job. And I was working a restaurant job the entire time during COVID. And then that whole time I was just thinking, there has to be something better than this. Like, come on here. And so I think everyone's thinking that, and they're seeing people, you know, flip NFTs or spec different cryptocurrencies or GameStop. And yeah, like some people are financially savvy. They understand what's happening. Most people aren't, but they still know that like maybe one of these dice rolls will end up winning big, and that can change their life. And I think young people are just starting to wake up to the depth of the financial system and how much like money is flowing around. And people like in America, I think it was a bit of a, like sometimes a taboo, you know, you don't want to be seen as like the finance person, the finance bro, especially for a lot of people. Like they get clowned for that. They're like, oh, were you a finance bro? You're a stock guy. It's like, yeah, because like you see how much is coming in and out of this system. Like there's a lot. So of course I want to tap in. And I think a lot more people are trying to become savvy, and especially with the tools that are available now, DeFi, not just that, Robinhood, Webull, Coinbase, easy to get into these things. Even Coinbase NFTs are coming out now. So that's a whole nother, you know, probably going to fuel massive amount of growth in the NFT space because of that. And yeah, I definitely think you're right. It's just people are trying to think of new ways to get ahead. And
Right.
it's more difficult than ever right now because of like the state of the world and like how everything's kind of backed up.
Definitely. Well, I just want to say, you know, thank you so much, you know, for
Of
setting this
course.
up, and I really appreciate you and AlgoHQ. I mean, you are crushing it with community, and I think, you know, it's exactly, you know, people like you that are really, you know, building Algorand to what it is, right? Being able to reach such a large audience and
Thank you.
just, you know, keep communicating the great news.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Kyle. So keep us updated on Valhalla Capital. Tweet out when you're at these conferences, anything interesting that you find. We'd love to hear from you. And yeah, keep specking those Goannas.
Awesome. You know it. You know it. That's my favorite activity right now. So, you know, that and Twitter auction sniping. So, you know, look out, man. I've landed. So there's no more plain internet. So I'm
Yeah.
coming. I'm coming
All right.
for your
Well,
JPEG. All right. Thank you so much, man. This has been great. Thanks so much. All right. And, you know, I'll talk soon and see you guys all on Twitter or, you know, on the in
for
the
sure.
metaverse, I
For
guess.
sure.